It's time to set the record straight. It's time to cut the crap, guys. I'm going to give you the list for the top 10 strikers in MMA. I don't care about what accolades you have in kickboxing, in boxing. All that matters is what you've been able to do in the sport of mixed martial arts. And I'm not just going to be saying, oh, I think this guy, oh, obviously. No, not obviously. I'll explain why these guys are ranked where they are. All right, you're not going to hear a single, well, oh, clearly he has to be here because Joe Rogan said so. I don't give a fuck about Joe Rogan, and I don't care about how many people put a certain guy at the top of the heap when in reality, there may not be a good reason. All right, I got criteria, and my criteria is number one, level of competition. Number two, if you fought normal people, have you at least been able to dominate them and set a huge gap between you and them? And number three, how many losses do you have? Have you been able to stink it up multiple times? I mean, if you're stinking it out and you're putting people like me to sleep multiple times, are you really the best striker on the planet? Well, you might be one of them, but I don't know if I'm going to put you at the top of the heap. Okay, so let's just get into it, guys. These are the most dangerous men on the face of the earth when it comes to a good old-fashioned stand-up battle. Let's get right to it. Some of you guys are going to be surprised. Some of you guys are not going to understand why, and I'll explain. Islam Makhachev is hopping in at the 10 spot, guys, the lightweight champion. I don't care if he's a grappler. We're talking about MMA, guys. We're talking about what he's been able to do in the octagon, who he's been able to go in there and strike with. And the two names that come to mind, because what I value most importantly is the level of competition. He has destroyed Charles Oliveira on the feet, and he's went tit for tat with Alexander Volkanovski. Say what you want, Volkanovski outlanded him over the course of the fight because a lot of Volkanovski's strikes came in that 5th round when he was on top of Islam. But at the end of the day, Islam Makhachev landed the harder shots, the more damaging shots to the dome. And I'm not saying it was a domination. It wasn't a schooling, but he did go tit for tat with Volk. And it wasn't just the threat of the takedown. Sometimes we've seen high-level wrestlers outstrike high-level strikers, like Kamaru Usman completely shutting down Jorge Masvidal. But if you look at Kamaru Usman's technique and you look at Kamaru Usman's career where he's so easy to hit, like Colby Covington was rocking this man around, Gilbert Burns was dropping this man. Islam Makhachev, yes, he's been knocked out way back in the day in 2015, but statistically, man, he's a different kind of guy than Usman. Islam Makhachev is the hardest man to hit clean in MMA, or at least he was before fighting Volk. And we're also looking at his ability to counter-strike with power and speed. Look at what he did to Charles Oliveira, shut him down completely. I bet most of you guys thought that Islam Makhachev would have needed to win that fight with his grappling. And yes, he found the submission, but ultimately the difference, because the grappling was pretty much nullified between both of Islam and Charles, the difference was the striking. He couldn't fucking graze Islam Makhachev's chin in that fight. This guy is so goddamn hard to hit. He really is a guy to where if you fight him, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. You know what I mean? You go to the ground with this guy, you're in his element. You stand up on the feet with this guy, well, you know that that's where you need to beat him, and all of a sudden you're going to try to overextend, you're going to try to get some success, and he's a counter striker that's hard to hit. And his opponents, with that mindset of, I have to outstrike him, that's my only chance. They go forward. That's exactly what Islam wants you to do. He's going to counter you. He's going to try to hurt you with a shot. You have the threat of the takedown. He's just a monster to deal with. And I have to put him at the top of this list. I have to put him up there, guys. I know Charles is not like the highest level striker, but he damn near is top 5 in the lightweight division. Can we at least agree with that? I feel like the reason why people pump the brakes when they talk about how good Charles is on the feet is because of the Islam Makhachev fight itself, right? If he had never fought Islam and went from fighting Justin Gaethje to Beneil Dariush, we'd all be talking about how Charles is one of the best strikers in MMA right now, and he is. You got to give him that credit too, and Islam shut him down. The only thing holding Islam back from being higher on this list is the amount of people that he's beat, right? The quality wins. And he's had a stinker with Thiago Moises. What's a stinker? A stinker is a fight that was just very underwhelming. Even if you win it clearly, it's underwhelming and almost kind of laughable. I'm not going to sit here and say his win over Thiago Moises was laughable, but it definitely wasn't that impressive. He's only got 2 impressive wins right now when it comes to his striking ability, and that's kind of it. So we can't put Islam any higher just because, again, you're kind of lacking the quantity that you would need to be higher up the list. But if this guy goes out there, destroys Charles Oliveira, and what if he KOs Volkanovski? We got to put him even higher. I'm going to add Corey Sandhagen on this list at the number 9 spot. Now, there's something a little bit weird about the bantamweight division because there are so many high-level strikers. In my opinion, the bantamweight division is the most stacked division in the UFC. It has the best strikers in the UFC, but because they're all so close to each other, because everything's so competitive, there's not one guy that stands head and shoulders above the rest. And the reason why I have Corey Sandhagen as my best representative for the bantamweight striking is because I feel like he would win more matchups overall in that division with striking than anyone else. I feel like Corey wins more matchups than a Sean O'Malley. I feel like he wins more matchups at this point in time than a Petr Yan. Yes, Petr Yan was able to beat Corey Sandhagen, okay, but it's not like Corey just got blown out of the water. He outlanded Petr Yan actually over the course of the fight, but he just got outdamaged. Yes, that was a clear win for Petr, but I feel like Corey's gotten a lot better, and I'm not saying Petr Yan's gotten worse, but his style is just hit or miss, man. He's got such low output. He's such a slow starter, whereas Corey Sandhagen, he's really the most complete fighter that there is when it comes to striking in the bantamweight division. He's high output. Everything he throws is to damage his opponents, right? He's constantly switching stances. He's so unpredictable. You have no idea what he's going to do because he basically has no pattern and he's always mixing it up. It's like 30% leg strikes, 30% body strikes, 40% strikes to the dome. He's always mixing it up. He's good in the clinch. He can cut you open with elbows. Again, really good at just damaging his opponents overall. And the fight IQ is off the charts. His distance management, his feints, everything is just perfect. And he has some power in his hands and limbs as well. Look at his KO over Frankie Edgar, sent him to the Shadow Realm. Look at his spinning wheel kick KO over Marlon Moraes. This is before Marlon Moraes was a train wreck and went on that downwards spiral. TJ Dillashaw, guys, I understand what you're thinking. That wasn't a win, that was a loss. Come on, that was a robbery. Corey Sandhagen put a beating on TJ Dillashaw, won that fight with damage. I think most of us could agree with that. And you'll see some of the highest level striking exchanges. Not even exchanges. You'll see some of the highest level striking sequences you could ever watch in the first round against TJ Dillashaw. One moment, and I'll just describe it right now. TJ is pressuring Corey Sandhagen up against the fence. Corey lets out a 1-2 down the pipe. It stumbles TJ back. TJ, frustrated, tries to get it back. Sandhagen greets him with a flying knee, flush to the chin. TJ's on his way down. He's falling from the impact. Sandhagen latches up a submission attempt, a triangle in mid-air. I mean, this guy's ability to mix and match the striking with the grappling, second to none. He's just so high level. And look at these wins. Song Yadong's a monster, right? In any other division, if you were to bulk up Song Yadong and throw him in the light heavyweight division or throw him in the welterweight division, that guy is basically unbeatable. He is a fucking beast. And so yes, Corey Sandhagen can't just go out there and totally wash Song Yadong out of the water, but he still beat him pretty clearly in my opinion. And got a doctor's stoppage. You look at the Chito Vera fight, schooled Chito Vera for 5 rounds. Yeah, he took him down at the beginning of that fight, but still schooled him on the feet. And again, the TJ Dillashaw fight, that was a very clear robbery in my opinion. And TJ Dillashaw is a guy going into that fight wasn't as broken, wasn't as old as he was when he left. Going into it, he was actually, if anything, a little bit refreshed. Yes, it wasn't the best version of TJ ever, but come on, he had a 2-year layoff, a little bit refreshed. I think that's a really good showing for Corey Sandhagen on the feet. And TJ, a lot of his success came with the grappling. Corey Sandhagen has got to be in the 9 spot for me. At the number 8 spot, Israel Adesanya. Guys, I understand what you're thinking. How is he not in the top 5? How is he not the best striker on earth? Guys, being 8 in the world is not anything to scoff at. You know, like, Izzy is phenomenal. He's a great striker. I'm just kind of breaking down the idea that he automatically has to be the number 1 guy. Oh, obviously Izzy's a top 3, right? No, not obviously. Not obviously. Not with all these stinkers, not with all of these L's, okay? And for some reason, Adesanya fans get mad when I have him at the 8th spot, as if, oh, 8th is so disrespectful. Calling this man the 8th best striker in the world, how horrible. Fuck that. That's actually really good. Adesanya is the 8th best striker on the fucking planet in MMA, in a mixed martial arts setting. The dude's legit, okay? So it's not disrespectful. I'm going to give this guy some respect early on. He beat Robert Whittaker in 2019, schooled him on the feet, knocked his ass out. He fought Whittaker twice. Okay, we're going to get to that in a little bit, but Alex Pereira knocking him out as well. Alex Pereira is a monster to deal with, one of the scariest men on the planet. Pair that with the fact that Adesanya had already lost to him 3 times in the past, only once in MMA, but you get the point. That's a massive mental hurdle to be able to come back from. And Izzy was able to get it done. But look at his other wins. Okay, we're going to look at his best wins before we get to the losses, before we get to the stinkers. Derek Brunson, Paulo Costa, Kelvin Gastelum. The 2 dominant ones are Derek Brunson and Paulo Costa. Well, I'm going to just be honest, guys. Those guys are not good at all on the feet. Paulo Costa is a glorified heavy puncher that was super hyped going into that fight. But as far as I'm concerned, this guy has no knockout power. And the only reason as to why he's even hyped up to begin with is because of that fucking knockout power. When's the last time Paulo Costa's ever knocked out anyone? The guy TKOs people like he's pillow hands Max Holloway. And I'm just making a little joke about Max, but at the end of the day, this guy's never knocked anyone out a day in his fucking life, right? He doesn't hit that hard. And as far as his skills go, the guy got outstruck by Marvin Mediocre Vettori. All right, Paulo Costa ain't shit. Israel Adesanya did what he needed to do to Paulo Costa. That was still a good performance. If he made it look any worse, we would have had some issues. Izzy did what he needed to do. Derek Brunson, sloppy boppy on the feet. He's Dricus du Plessis without a method to his madness. Kelvin Gastelum. Izzy actually looked good in that fight, but it wasn't dominant. All right, it wasn't a dominant win. They went to war. Izzy got it done. He proved that he was tough. Styled on Kelvin Gastelum in certain moments of that fight. Let's look at the losses. He got outstruck by Jan Blachowicz. Could barely whiff the chin of Jan Blachowicz early on in that fight. Got shut down. Got his leg kicks checked, right? Didn't get the boxing going at all. And we're going to talk about the threat of the takedown. Jan didn't try to grapple with him for the first 2 rounds. Those guys were just standing on the feet, kickboxing. Izzy didn't get the best of it. He lost that fight, got outstruck. Alex Pereira, he got outstruck in the first fight. Israel Adesanya had a moment where he hurt Alex early on. And outside of that, we're looking at the majority of round 2. We're looking at round 3 before the grappling exchange. We're looking at all of round 5. Israel Adesanya got shut down. The only round in which he was able to out kickbox Alex Pereira was round 4. Say what you want, he got TKO'd in that fight. So we're looking at 2 losses against some of the best strikers. Now let's look at the stinkers. I said he dominated Paulo Costa. I said he dominated Derek Brunson. What did he do against Marvin Vettori in the rematch? I know what he did. He put me to sleep. Okay? I don't care if you 50-45 someone. If I land 10 strikes and my opponent lands 9 strikes and all of those strikes are even damage, and I do that for 5 rounds, landing 1 more strike than my opponent for 5 rounds, that could be a 50-45. Does it mean I wash them out of the park? No, it don't. It doesn't. All right? That's basically what he did to Marvin Vettori. If you're going to sit here and argue and say, what are you saying? He completely dominated him. You haven't even watched the fight back like I did yesterday. The majority of the people that are going to comment about this and say, stop talking about the Marvin fight are people that haven't even watched that fight since it actually took place. Okay? Barely scraped by Marvin Vettori round for round. I'm sorry, man. I'm not going to fuck around and sit here and say, well, he did what he needed to do. No, he didn't. Look at what Jared Cannonier did to Marvin Vettori. Look at what Robert Whittaker did to Marvin Vettori. Okay? Those guys schooled him, all right? Either put a life-changing amount of damage on him like Jared Cannonier or made him look like an amateur like Robert Whittaker. Why couldn't Israel Adesanya dominate the man? Why? And the only answer is he couldn't. And guys, at the end of the day, I'm just going to say it how it is. If you are called the best striker on the face of the earth in MMA, and there are any questions or doubts about a fight that you had with a man named Mediocre Marvin Vettori, and it wasn't all peaches and cream, and you didn't destroy him and make him look like a fool, where much lesser strikers have been able to do that to him, then you shouldn't be called the best striker on the face of the earth. There should never be a critique about the #1 striker and a fight that he had with mediocre Marvin Vettori. I'm not saying Izzy was in trouble. I'm not saying it was a war. I'm just saying it was underwhelming as fuck and it put me to sleep. All right, so when you're going to talk about half of this dude's title defenses, half of them are stinkers or losses, okay? You look at the Jared Cannonier fight, put me to sleep, all right? You're the biggest, baddest fucking striker on the planet. Fuck that guy up. What's the deal? All right, and I'm not going to sit here and act like Izzy isn't amazing. He's an amazing striker. Why aren't you able to school and make Marvin Vettori look like a complete and utter fool and amateur? It's because he couldn't. It's that simple. And so you put this guy at the top of your list. Why? I don't get it. Robert Whittaker beat this man in the rematch, outboxed him, outdamaged him, outlanded him. Outside of the first round, Israel Adesanya did absolutely nothing in that fight. So yeah, you TKO'd Robert Whittaker, but he got it back. As far as I'm concerned, that was also a stinker. And Yoel Romero, that ain't a stinker. That's a shit fest. And so when it comes to Izzy, where does he do his best work? Well, guys, I'm just going to say it how it is. Israel Adesanya is someone that needs the KO to look super impressive. Okay, you look at his most impressive performances. Whitaker 1, Alex Pereira 2. Knocked out Alex Pereira in the second round. Knocked out Robert Whitaker in the second round. Knocked out Derek Brunson in the first round. Knocked out Paulo Costa in the second round. Went to war with Kelvin Gastelum. He has never knocked out anyone outside of the first 2 rounds. Okay, Adesanya's way to win fights in impressive fashion is to KO people with beautiful counter shots when he still has a lot of fast twitch ability in the early going of fights. After that, he has not proven to be able to school people for the majority of 5 rounds. Then you got to question, why do you have him at the number 1 spot? It's because you're being told to, and there's not a great argument. The people above Adesanya on this list are all more impressive than him, okay? Adesanya has names on his resume, but some of those names, as I mentioned, they're not impressive wins. I don't care about all the fans saying, well, obviously, Izzy has to. Why? Why does Izzy have to be at the top of the list? That's something that always kind of annoys me. It's like people just, oh, well, Izzy has to be in here. Like the number 1 spot is reserved for him. Why is it reserved for Izzy? I think you need to earn that spot. Level of competition checked off for 2 of these wins. Derek Brunson, Paulo Costa, as far as I'm concerned, aren't great levels of competition. Kelvin Gastelum, good competition. What did he do to him? He went to war with Kelvin Gastelum. Beautiful fight. I absolutely loved it. But that's not going to make me sit here and say he's the best striker on the fucking planet. Kelvin Gastelum is not like a top 10 striker. And of course, he's knocked out guys like Pereira, right? He's knocked out guys like Robert Whitaker. But they've also KO'd him or beat him in a rematch. And I'm not just going to sit here and say, well, it's been a couple of years, and even though the UFC robbed Whitaker, they robbed my boy, well, all of a sudden, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt because it's been a long time, and that's what they want. They want you to just scoff at the robberies because time passes on. No, I remember it. Adesanya is one of the better strikers in MMA, but I can't ignore all the asterisks, guys. I can't ignore all the underwhelming stinkfest performances that he's put on. Yes, he's had his moments where he's looked like he was untouchable. He looked like he was one of the best counter strikers I've ever seen. But I'm just going to be real with you. Israel Adesanya is a guy that kind of needs the KO to look really, really goddamn good. Otherwise, it's going to be underwhelming. I don't think there's a good argument to keep this guy at the top of your list because there are other strikers in MMA that do not have all of these stink fests. There are other strikers in MMA that don't even have these kinds of losses. And again, his best wins, there's really only 2 wins that Izzy has that are phenomenal, right? Everything else, asterisks, okay? Yes, he beat Alex Pereira. Great. What has Alex Pereira done in MMA? I don't give a fuck about all of the kickboxing accolades that he has. We're talking about MMA right now. We're talking about what have you done in this sport? Okay, that's what the list is on. The list is on strikers. And I'm not stubborn enough to say, oh, Alex Pereira is a shitty striker because he has not really done a lot in MMA. I'm not that stubborn. Okay, I know exactly what Alex Pereira is capable of. But as far as I'm concerned, guys, just because he beat Alex Pereira doesn't mean he's the number 1 guy in MMA. I don't like how people just assume that he beat Alex and him and Alex have to be the number 1 guy because of all their kickboxing accolades. I don't give a fuck about their kickboxing accolades. We're here to talk about MMA. Once again, I have yet to hear anyone try to offer a solid argument to why this guy is the best striker in MMA. Please talk about any other win that he has other than Whitaker and Alex Pereira and try to sell it as one of the best wins of all time. You can't. So you're probably thinking, well, Lucas, you have all these critiques. Why is he a number 8 guy? Well, he beat Whitaker. Okay, and he schooled Whitaker. The only guy to ever do that to Robert Whitaker is Dricus du Plessis, as crazy as that sounds, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson when Whitaker was a tadpole. He beat Alex Pereira. There aren't many guys that can knock Alex Pereira out like that. Israel Adesanya, his counter-striking is unbelievable, right? His instincts in the fire, in the pocket, where guys are coming at him hard, trying to take his head out. He has such a weird offbeat style of striking that once again, it's very possible that this guy can go out there and knock his opponents out on any given day. And that's what makes Israel Adesanya so good. When this man is in the first and second round, he's one of the most dangerous fighters you could ever stand in front of. And you have to put him high up for that. So, I mean, come on. How many people are going to KO Whitaker like that and make him look like a fool? How many people are going to put Alex Pereira out with that kind of counter shot, baiting him up against the fence. The guy has a high fight IQ. And when it comes to his defensive ability, guys, it's not all about offense. Israel Adesanya is one of the most defensively sound fighters at the top of his division, right? Think about it like this. Alex Pereira, I would sit here and tell you that he's a better pure offensive kickboxer, but he lacks head movement. Israel Adesanya's head movement, his ability to make you miss, his ability to roll with shots. He also has a pretty good chin. It's very hard to get off on this guy. It's very hard to hurt Izzy. And the only people that can really shut him down are people that can match him on leg kicks. There are not many guys that can match him on leg kicks. Alex Pereira, Jan Blachowicz, those are the only guys that can really match him there. Most people are going to get their legs chopped off. Most people are going to be, sitting ducks for the majority of the fight, even when they do get their legs chopped off, because again, that'll take their movement away. And Izzy, with the long reach, with his speed, can just kind of cruise to decision victories. And that's what makes Izzy so goddamn good. It's either you're going in to try to take his head off to really go for that finish early on, and he knocks your lights out because, again, he's just so good at countering people. He's got this really weird rhythm with his striking. It's not just a 1-2. It's a 1-2, right? It's a 1-3, right? It's something crazy like that. So Israel Adesanya either fucks you up and knocks your ass out early on, or he's going to take your legs away. He's going to take your base out from underneath you, and he's going to cruise to a decision victory. And even though it won't be that impressive, it'll look kind of effortless. So at the end of the day, guys, I do have to give Izzy some respect. Alex Pereira at the number 7 spot. The reason, guys, I have him just slightly ahead of Israel Adesanya just kind of boils down to the fact that I think he would outstrike more people in more dominant fashion than Izzy in the middleweight division or the 205-pound division. He's not as good as Izzy defensively, right? And he doesn't have as many wins. He's lost to Adesanya. He's knocked out Adesanya, which is his best win. So that kind of cancels out. He's the only guy to make Sean Strickland look like a complete and utter fool on the feet, completely smoking Sean Strickland. And say what you want about the Strickland fight, but Sean Strickland's a guy that's hard to hit. That's a guy that's pretty defensively sound, and we've seen him fight big, heavy punchers even after he had gotten KO'd, to where you would expect Strickland's chin to be a little bit iffy when he fought Jared Cannonier, and he was able to beat Jared Cannonier in a close fight. And it's not like just because you're a heavy puncher, you're going to knock this guy out. In order to get a win like that, you have to be very high level. And of course, the Bruno Silva win. I'm not going to act like Bruno Silva is the best opponent, guys. At the end of the day, I don't even know if I could put this guy that much higher than Izzy. And again, I get what you're thinking. How is this guy the number 7 best striker in the world? How is he higher? Look at these wins. He's got 3 wins in MMA that are that notable. The Michailidis win, I don't give a fuck about the Michailidis win. It's a good win. It's an impressive knockout. Come on, that's not a notable name. That guy is barely holding on for dear life to his UFC contract. Lost to Adesanya. Okay, he's gotten KO'd by Izzy. That wasn't the best look. He showcased some pretty shitty fight IQ in that second round. And of course, there ain't nothing wrong with there is something wrong with getting knocked out by Izzy, bro. Izzy's the number 8th guy on my list. So how the hell are you going to be number 1? Again, I feel like MMA fans don't really have the best logic when they're coming up with the best strikers for what people have done in the octagon. Like, I think that's the best criteria to go off of. The level of competition, we have Strickland and Adesanya, and that's really it. But it's like you lost to Izzy too, and you got KO'd by him as well. So it's not like you just have a clean slate with that guy Izzy. And where are all your other showings? Like, what, are we going to go back to the LFA and get this guy's knockout over a can? Yes, 6-time kickboxing world champion. Fantastic. So amazing. I'm not dumb. Like, I clearly understand that when this guy gets into the cage, he's going to be bringing something that is incredibly hard to deal with on the feet. But I need him to prove it a little bit more, right? And the only reason, again, why I have him ahead of Izzy is just because I feel like if he were to go in there with Jan Blachowicz, he's got a better kicking game than Jan Blachowicz, right? He was checking Izzy's leg kicks. He was shutting down Izzy's kicking game. And I feel like this is the guy that could maybe match Jan, because Jan is a fucking monster with his leg kick defense. And because he can match Jan with the leg kicks, or at least I think he might be able to, that's going to open up the hands. And this guy's got the kiss of death in that left hook. He's very dangerous, and he's got the long reach. I think he's a little bit more of a juggernaut offensively. And if you put this guy in front of some of these guys that Izzy has fought, like a Jared Cannonier or someone like a Marvin Vettori, I know Marvin hasn't been KO'd, but this guy might be the one to be able to do it. Now, yes, his grappling, That's a big hole in his game. I'm not saying that this guy's a better MMA fighter than Izzy. No, Izzy clears this motherfucker in terms of being an MMA fighter. One of the reasons why Izzy, for example, is so good, it's because he can stuff takedowns and keep the fight standing and just barely do enough to win the fights against guys that are trying to grapple him. Alex Pereira doesn't have that ability, but again, we're just talking about the striking here. You're going to put this guy at the number 1 spot? Why? Like, how many reasons do we have other than TKOing Izzy? And that's it. Izzy's not the best striker in MMA. I basically just sat down and proved it to you. And then, of course, the Sean Strickland win is okay, but it's like, is Sean Strickland a Song Yadong? Is Sean Strickland even a TJ Dillashaw level of striker? Fuck no. And once again, I'm going to touch on the idea that it's somehow disrespectful to put Alex Pereira outside of your top 3. It's not disrespectful. He's the 7th best striker in MMA. One of the best kickboxers of all time. This guy might be a top 5 kickboxer ever. He's got 6 championship wins in glory. Once again, what the fuck does that have to do with MMA? We're talking about mixed martial arts, what they've done in the sport, okay? He hasn't done enough, all right? And there are guys ahead of him that have done more, like Max Holloway. This is a perfect example of someone that most of you guys are going to sit here and say, he's not ahead of Alex Pereira just because he doesn't have the accolades, because he didn't KO Izzy. Look at who he's beat. Jose Aldo twice, TKO'd Aldo, a top 10 fighter of all time, all right? Aldo, we can all agree, is a top 10 fighter, right? How did he get there? Well, it wasn't his fucking grappling. It was his striking. He's one of the best strikers to ever do it. This guy TKO'd him within 3 rounds twice. Look at what he did to Calvin Kattar. That was one of the most impressive performances we've ever seen in our entire life. Say what you want about Calvin Kattar. I know the guy is not some like top 10 juggernaut striker that we've ever seen, but it's still a decent featherweight boxer in the featherweight division. These guys are fast. These guys have good technical skills. That's an amazing win to have, especially in the fashion that he did. Complete and utter dominance, setting a strike record. Brian Ortega. I know people like to crap on Ortega. They like to shit on him a little bit, but at the end of the day, he's only really lost to some of the scariest strikers you could ever imagine. And Max Holloway, once again, put on a world record-setting performance at the time, in which he actually ended up breaking that record against Calvin Kattar. But I'm just giving you guys another win that is amazing, because Ortega's got a boxing style, and look at what Max Holloway did to him. He was teaching him how to block. We're talking about dominance here against ranked opponents in the featherweight division. It's unreal. The reason why people like to scoff at someone like Ortega is because of the way Max Holloway made him look. It's because of the way Volkanovski made him look. But Volk and Max, some of the best fighters to ever do it. Yair Rodriguez. I'm going to get to Yair in a little bit, guys. Max Holloway didn't necessarily outstrike Yair at all moments of the fight. It was very tough, but he went tit for tat with Yair for the majority of it, right? I wouldn't even say he outstruck him. He won the fight. A large portion of that was landing strikes on the ground with some ground and pound shots. For whatever reason, people are going to look at the stats and say, Max Holloway clearly outstruck him. Well, a lot of those shots were landed on the ground. He did his thing on the feet. But hey, if you're going tit for tat with Yair to begin with, that's amazing. And how many people can just stand with Yair and take head kicks like that and take damage and give it back? I mean, not many people. So that, in my opinion, is still a really good win, because yes, Max Holloway grappled to get the dub ultimately, but most of the fight was spent on the feet. Arnold Allen. I mean, I understand Holloway didn't wash him out like he did Calvin Kattar and Brian Ortega, but Arnold Allen is an incredibly high-level fighter. Extremely fast. He's the new era to a T, and Holloway shut him down, showcased a more defensively sound approach to where he's not just going to be willing to eat as many shots, and he still significantly outlanded this guy. Then we're going to go to Anthony Pettis, right? TKO'd Anthony Pettis, beat Ricardo Lamas, beat up Jeremy Stevens. You know, these guys at the time when Max Holloway beat them were still pretty solid. We're looking at all of these wins. So when I talk about best MMA strikers, I mean, look at this guy's resume. Look how many names we have. And again, in the featherweight division, where there's a lot of skill, there's a lot of technical ability with people striking. This is what I mean, guys, by actually proving that you are one of the best MMA strikers on the planet. So once again, I'm going to contrast Max Holloway's wins with Alex Pereira's wins. We got this list: Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, and Bruno Silva. We're really reaching for sticks when we're going with Bruno Silva, right? We're really grasping at straws there. And then look at Max Holloway. We're talking about Jose Aldo, one of the best strikers to ever do it, a top 10 guy. We're talking about going tit for tat with Yair. We're talking about putting on record-setting performances over really solid ranked opponents. I mean, come on. As far as I'm concerned, how on earth are you going to put Alex Pereira above this guy without the accolades. We're just talking about MMA. Once again, I don't care how many kickboxing world championships you've won. What the fuck have you done in the octagon? Now let's get to the losses. All right. Clearly, Max can't be the best striker on earth because he's lost to Dustin Poirier and Volkanovski 3 times. Yes, one of those fights with Volkanovski was very, very close. The second fight, that was actually one of the best versions of Max that we've ever seen. He was schooling Volkanovski early on in that fight. And of course, against Dustin Poirier, a really good fight. You know, it wasn't total domination from Dustin. It was a clear win for Dustin, but there were moments where Max Holloway was doing his thing, and he still landed a ton of shots on Dustin Poirier. He didn't get completely smoked. So it's a loss. It's a legit loss, but it's something that I'm not going to look at and say he got embarrassed. Frankie Edgar was the stinker. Now, I understand that might sound a little weird. How are you going to call it a stinker? He 50-45 Frankie Edgar. It was an incredibly underwhelming fight, very boring. Yes, Frankie Edgar was still okay, even though he is at the latter half of his career. He was all right, but I have to just be honest, guys, that was not that impressive of a performance for Max Holloway, not his best showing. And let me just mention this again, you could 50-45 someone and every single round can be underwhelming and not really that big of a gap between you and your opponent. At the end of the day, this guy has created a gap between him and the majority of ranked opponents that he's fought throughout his career, and half of the time the gap that he creates between him and his opponents are massive. I mean, who the hell has been able to create such a gap between Jose Aldo and repeat that multiple times? Not many people. In fact, no one. This is the only guy to ever beat Aldo twice. I have to put him at number 6. Dustin Poirier, this is the guy that's number 5. Another person that I feel like is a little bit disrespected because people just look at what he actually brings into the octagon. Yes, it's rather one-dimensional. Yes, he looks like a bit of a turtle on his back when he's taken down. But who the hell has really been able to outstrike this man? Not many people. And yes, he's a boxer. He's got that tough as nails dog style in the pocket, right? But at the end of the day, it works. It's effective. And as far as I'm concerned, this guy's just going to walk down most people and beat their ass and make them miss for the majority of fights. And look at who he's beat. He beat Max Holloway. He beat one of the best strikers in the game. And that was a clear win, an impressive win. He outboxed Max Holloway for the majority of that fight. He was able to go out there and destroy Eddie Alvarez and TKO him as well. Justin Gaethje, I mean, they're about to fight again. I still haven't made my official pick for this, but I'm leaning slightly towards Dustin Poirier, and he was able to TKO Justin Gaethje and just batter him in the later rounds. We know that Justin Gaethje's legit. He's one of the better strikers in MMA as well. Conor McGregor, as far as I'm concerned, guys, this was one of Dustin's easiest fights in the latter half of his career. He smoked Conor in the second round, dusted him up, TKO'd him, right? And Conor McGregor is a solid boxer. That guy's a pretty dangerous striker, you know, especially the 2021 version of Conor that he was able to beat. I'm talking about the rematch. I'm not going to get into the trilogy. Conor broke his leg. I'm not going to, act like Dustin Poirier really schooled him that badly on the feet in that fight. A lot of it was the grappling, right? He was able to beat up Anthony Pettis, KO'd Bobby Green. Bobby Green, again, a guy that might not be at the top of the rankings these days, but I believe he was ranked at the time in the lightweight division. And in his prime, that's a guy to where if you bump him up a couple weight classes, that guy is having a field day with a lot of opponents. Green is a good striker, a good boxer. Poirier just beat his ass and TKO'd him in the first round. Dan Hooker. That win has aged even better for Dustin Poirier because Dan Hooker just got himself a great win over Jalen Turner. That's another dangerous striker. And Dustin Poirier, yeah, the first couple rounds were tough, but he schooled him in the later rounds, beat his ass, showcased that gritty boxing style that he has. And Dustin gets better as the fights go on. Michael Chandler, tricky win right there because Chandler was winning the majority of the fight. Dustin didn't really ultimately win with his striking. He submitted Michael Chandler for being low IQ, and that's good for Dustin. But as far as the striking is concerned, he still did drop Chandler at the end of the first round. And let's be honest, if you're losing the majority of the first round against Chandler, that's not the worst look because Michael Chandler is a demon in the first round against basically anyone. And if we're going to look at the losses, we're going to have to go way back in the day to guys like TKZ in 2012. To guys like Conor McGregor in 2014, but he's improved a lot. We're talking about the best MMA fighters right now, all right? And Michael Johnson, that's the one loss that is somewhat recent from the modern era, even though it wasn't really recent. It's more recent than the Conor McGregor loss in 2014. That's one weird moment, okay, where he got KO'd. Michael Johnson, incredibly fast. We've seen his ability to just beat some of the best guys in the world and also lose to some of the most mediocre fighters. But other than that, he's lost to Charles Oliveira. And it's not like Charles battered him on the feet. Like, Dustin Poirier gave Charles everything that he could handle. And Charles Oliveira is one of the most dangerous men on the face of the earth. And he's incredibly well-rounded as well. Really good in the tie clinch. And Khabib Nurmagomedov, that's not a guy that outstruck Dustin Poirier. So the losses that I'm bringing up here are to really highlight that none of them are recent, where he's gotten outstruck, that is. And the ones that are recent are him getting submitted, him getting outdone by a grappler. Remember, Charles, outside of the first round, didn't strike with Dustin. He took him down, beat him up in the second round, and gassed him out a little bit and found the submission in the third. Khabib Nurmagomedov wasn't striking at all with Dustin Poirier. So, again, I have to put Dustin at the number 5 spot. And once again, I'm going to reiterate this. I don't care how many times people have put Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway below Izzy and Pereira. They've done more in MMA. They've had less stinkers overall. All right. And Dustin Poirier is a guy that's been around for a long time. Everything that he's done as of recent, except for fighting Khabib and Charles, has just been him outstriking people at the highest level. And for him to outstrike a guy like Max Holloway, I mean, come on, that's incredible. All right, guys, let's head on to the number 4 spot. We got that old man Jan Blachowicz that just keeps on chugging along through his career. His style ain't nothing too crazy. It ain't pretty, but it works. And he's been able to shut down some of the best strikers in MMA time and time again. And when he takes a step down in competition, he tends to beat the shit out of people and finish them with ease. We're looking at the best wins against guys like Israel Adesanya, where he schooled Izzy for 2 rounds. The third round was somewhat close, but either way, out kickboxing one of the best strikers on earth in a guy like Adesanya. Pretty damn impressive for Jan Blachowicz. Especially his defensive game. This is the hardest guy to hit cleanly in the upper weight classes. I would even go as far as to say he is probably the best defensively sound striker that we've ever seen in the heavier weight classes, aside from one man, and that's maybe John Jones. But Jan Blachowicz can do it everywhere on the feet. He's great offensively. TKO Dominic Reyes. I understand that it's Dominic Reyes, but Dominic Reyes was coming off of a win against John Jones. And when we think about Reyes at this point in his career, we think about a guy with no chin. That's not really a big test for anyone. But the first man to put this guy's lights out was Jan Blachowicz. Dominic Reyes didn't even lose his chin until the Yuri fight, where he got spinning elbowed into another dimension. But before that, he was still a killer. I mean, again, most of us would agree that he beat Jones. For Jan Blachowicz to go out there and knock his ass out and just outclass him on the feet for 2 rounds is pretty damn impressive if you ask me. We're looking at wins over Alexander Rakic, one of the heaviest leg kickers in MMA. Jan Blachowicz, with his leg checking defense, just shut that down, broke this man's legs, and Rakic wasn't able to make it out of that fight. A lot of people say it was a fluky injury. No, it wasn't. His legs were destroyed. Corey Anderson, not the best striker, not the best fighter, but Jan Blachowicz did what he needed to do to him. He knocked his ass out in the first round. Luke Rockhold, at that point in his career, yes, it's not the best version of Luke Rockhold. Jan Blachowicz did what he needed to do to him, completely shut down the kicking game of Luke Rockhold, and that's his bread and butter, and then knocked him out. Nikita Krylov submitted Nikita, but outstruck him before the submission. Jared Cannonier, that's another name. People forget that Jan Blachowicz shut down Jared Cannonier and outstruck him as well. When it comes to stinkers, I'll be very consistent. Jan Blachowicz has had a stinker before against Jacare Souza in 2019. One of those performances to where it was a very clear win for him, but so underwhelming and boring, and just one of those performances that actually would lower someone's stock, put me to sleep as well. So I have to just mention that. That was something that I have to bring up as an asterisk. He took Magomed Ankalaev to a draw at the age of 40, did not win that fight due to grappling exchanges, where he got outgrappled in the later 2 rounds, but he was winning the majority of the striking exchanges. And as far as I'm concerned, Magomed Ankalaev is also one of the best defensively sound fighters in the upper weight classes. He's a great striker at 205, and Jan just wobbled him around on, stanky legs when he was shutting down the leg kicks of Magomed, checking his leg kicks, landing hard low kicks of his own. I would go as far as to say Jan Blachowicz has the best low kicks in MMA based on how effective they are. He's one of the only fighters that can really and truly change the course of a fight with just your basic leg kick. And that's how he was able to dismantle Israel Adesanya. Remember, if you take away Izzy's leg kicks, he resorts to boxing. Well, Jan Blachowicz took away both of those things, and we saw what happened. And now let's look at his losses. Well, he lost to Alexander Gustafsson, but he really just got out-grappled there. He held his own on the feet. If anything, I'm willing to say that Jan actually got the better of Gustafsson in a lot of exchanges. And again, it's really the grappling that made a big difference. He got KO'd by Thiago Santos, but this is a guy in Thiago Santos that was a wild man in his prime, one of the heaviest hitters at the time in the UFC. That's a reason as to why we can't say Jan is the best striker to ever grace the earth, because some people have fought Thiago and they've evaded that KO. Jan was not able to do that, but either way, that's like the one real loss that he has when it just comes down to the striking alone. Glover Teixeira submitted Jan Blachowicz. He landed big shots on Jan, rocked Jan on the feet. So that was just a really bad showing of Jan Blachowicz, but ultimately he was out-grappled. He was held down. He was submitted. It wasn't really him just getting pieced up on the feet. And I really just think that Jan Blachowicz shat his pants that night and showed up looking horrible. But either way, you look at all the names that Jan has, he has never really got made to look like a lesser opponent against anyone on the feet. And this is why I'm really excited to see his next fight with Alex Pereira, who we also know has some serious low kicks, has a really good leg checking defense as well. I can't wait to see the leg kick game between both of them. Jan Blachowicz is in his 40s now, so it's possible that he'll start to slide, but I was expecting to see a little bit of that against Magomed Ankalaev, and although he looks a little bit slower than he was in the past, his defense is holding up, and he's still crafty, and he's still like a brick wall. It's kind of hard to damage this guy, even at this point in his career, and he's still able to hurt people on the feet with the low kicks as well. And of course, he still has that power. He has knockout power. So Jan Blachowicz is really just one of the most complete, defensively sound strikers that we have in the UFC. And again, you're looking at the losses, only one of them is really due to an exchange that has to do with striking alone. Yair Rodriguez at number 3, guys. I believe that Yair, offensively, is probably the best striker in MMA right now from a pure offensive standard. He may not have the best striking defense, but nobody can stand and strike with this man unless A, you're Volkanovski and you've already taken him down and tired him out early, and he doesn't have the same sting at the end of those shots, or B, you're Max Holloway, and in that case, you still have to grapple, and when you are on the feet, you can take flush head kicks because you have the best chin in the world. And so you're probably asking, well, why isn't he at the number 1 spot? Well, the truth is, guys, yes, Yair Rodriguez is someone that's a monster for anyone to deal with, but he did still get TKO'd and wobbled badly on the feet by Volk, and Volk was able to tee off on him a little bit against the fence and TKO'd him. Against Max Holloway, we've seen Volkanovski completely batter Max and just get out of the way of a lot of Max's shots, whereas Yair still went to war with Max Holloway. I think Volkanovski is more defensively sound than Yair Rodriguez. So although offensively Yair Rodriguez is probably the most impressive, because of the lack of defense, I'm going to have to say Volkanovski is the more well-rounded striker and would probably win more matchups, similarly to Corey Sandhagen and Petr Yan. Petr Yan may be able to outstrike Corey Sandhagen in that matchup, right? Even though it's by a slim margin, but I think Corey Sandhagen's probably the more well-rounded striker in the majority of matchups that he has. And also, it's not like Volkanovski has lost to anyone. It's not like Volkanovski needed to grapple at every single point in this fight. No, he decided to stand with Yair in the 3rd, and he ultimately finished him in that round. So Yair's a beast. He did, in my opinion, outstrike Max Holloway when it was on the feet, but either way, it was an all-out war. So when he's fought these guys that are really, really high level, he hasn't been able to make them look like fools. He hasn't been able to completely shut them down and outclass them. He has had, a relatively close fight with them or close striking exchanges. And the only guy that's above him, in my opinion, right now is Volk. And we've seen Volkanovski make Max look silly in moments. We've seen Volkanovski make Jose Aldo look silly. Whereas Yair Rodriguez, the guys that he's making look silly are Ortega. And that's a decent win. We got Josh Emmett. That's okay. But it's he's not been able to get that one win over an amazing opponent yet to where I can put him that high. For Yair, it really boils down to what this guy's capable of, even what he's been able to show in the fights that he's lost, right? So he may not have the highest quantity of amazing wins, but what he's been able to show against Max Holloway is impressive. The mystique that he brought to the Volkanovski fight to make Volkanovski grapple early and need to tire him out on the ground before just striking with him was something that's pretty impressive. Volkanovski's not going to do that with anyone else. And I just want to make it clear as to why Yair Rodriguez is ahead of everyone that I've already covered. The level of respect that other incredibly high-level strikers have shown Yair, and it's not just that he has power. I just want to reiterate the level of respect that I'm talking about. It's for everything. I mean, this guy's ability to throw any kind of attack is also something that is so goddamn dangerous, and you just can't replicate that with any other striker in the game. I mean, there's really only one other man that can come close to having the same kind of arsenal of attacks as Yair Rodriguez. So everyone that Yair fights knows that this guy has about 1,000 tools that he can use to mess you up. I really have to put Yair Rodriguez up here. There's basically no one on this list that I've mentioned that has the versatility of attacks, the variety, the ability to hurt you at any goddamn range on the feet like Yair does, and that's ultimately why he's at my number 3 spot. Stephen Thompson at number 2. Speaking of guys that just have a ton of variety in their arsenal, this is one of them. You know, I mean, this guy has so many different kinds of attacks. He's got a beautiful jab. He's got a good right hand, good boxing, good basic attacks, good leg kicks, body kicks, side kicks to the body. But of course, we've seen this guy style on other strikers and make it look like he's in a karate movie. I mean, when I watch Stephen Thompson strike, I honestly feel like it's a Hollywood movie, and that's how impressive he is. He's the only one that can throw 3 spinning heel kicks in a row and land all of them and have his opponent know exactly what's coming every single time, but they still can't do a damn thing about it. This dude is a freak of nature, like Yair Rodriguez. The reason why he's ahead of Yair is because we look at all of these amazing wins that he has. He's been able to prove it for a longer period of time. Guys, I feel like Stephen Thompson gets underrated a lot and lost a bit in these striking conversations. We all know that Stephen Thompson is legit. We would normally pick him against any opponent that he's pitted up against in a striking-only battle, but people just forget about all the amazing wins that he has. And we're talking about Jeff Neal. We're talking about Kevin Holland. He destroyed Kevin Holland. Outside of that first round, he butchered him, and a lot of people have brought up the broken hand of Kevin Holland. Stephen Thompson broke his hand in that fight as well. And who's responsible for breaking that fucking hand, by the way, of Kevin Holland? Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy's the reason. He was slamming those head kicks on the guard of Kevin Holland early, and that caused a lot of damage. Bringing up Jeff Neal, this guy got 50-45'd by Stephen Thompson. We all know how much of a monster on the feet Jeff Neal is. Stephen Thompson completely shut him down. Robert Whittaker, TKO'd Robert Whittaker way back in the day. Jorge Masvidal. Jorge, in his prime, was a problem on the feet, and Stephen Thompson schooled him. Vicente Luque, Stephen Thompson shut that man down in his prime and schooled him. You know, it was landing those side kicks to the body and dropping Vicente every now and then, just putting on a masterclass. Rory McDonald, again, a masterclass from Stephen Thompson, and he TKO'd Johnny Hendricks as well. These are incredible wins. I don't think I've ever seen someone just stand with him and outstrike him, ever. Tyron Woodley. Yes, he lost to Woodley, but Woodley did use a lot of his grappling in that fight. And of course, Woodley in his prime is a guy that just needed that one shot, but I still favor Stephen Thompson's striking ability. Yeah, he got KO'd by Anthony Pettis. Guys, at the end of the day, this is a little bit of a one-off. I can kind of accept that. It's very weird. I mean, I still don't really understand how Anthony Pettis was able to make that happen against Stephen Thompson, but it taught Thompson a lesson. He hasn't taken risks like that since then. Stinker, I'll say Darren Till. He lost that fight. A lot of people thought that he got robbed, but either way, it's like it wasn't a very impressive performance from either guy. If anything, it's more impressive for Till to make it that close to begin with. But Stephen Thompson, I have to just say that that was a bit of a stinker. And of course, he took Woodley to a draw in their first fight, outstruck Woodley for a lot of moments on the feet. So I have to say Stephen Thompson's there at number 2. If his next opponent, Michel Pereira, stands with him, Stephen Thompson's going to piece him up. Like, you cannot outstrike this guy on the feet and win a decision. That's just not what you can do, right? You either have to knock him out, knock his lights out, or you have to take him down and drown him like a Bilal Muhammad. That's why I don't have the Bilal fight listed as a loss and the Burns fight listed as a loss, because his striking didn't look bad. We can't really judge his striking based on him getting taken down by those guys. We're really just looking at how he looks on the feet. And he has the perfect combination of wins against stiff competition, longevity, being able to replicate that quite a bit, and setting a gap between him and some of the better strikers. Alexander Volkanovski, the number 1 guy, fits the criteria perfectly. His only loss is to Islam Makhachev, who is one of the most defensively sound fighters on the planet, and Volkanovski was the only man to be able to really land a lot of shots on Islam, and he's landed more on Islam than any of Islam Makhachev's former opponents combined, which is crazy. You also have Max Holloway, the way that he schooled him in the trilogy, you know, the way that he was able to beat Max the first time, shutting him down for basically 4 rounds, schooling Jose Aldo, 30-27. I think he held Aldo to under 30 strikes in that fight, and he himself had like 90 plus strikes. He just TKO'd Yair Rodriguez. Like, who the fuck is TKOing Yair Rodriguez and rocking him badly and finding the perfect counter shot on the feet? That's just beautiful work. Brian Ortega shut him down as well. Max Holloway in 2020. Say what you want about that fight. It certainly ain't a stinker. I know that some of you guys might be saying, well, isn't that a stinker? Well, it wasn't, because it was a really entertaining fight. It's actually one of my favorite fights of all time because of how underratedly entertaining and back and forth it was. But Volk's adjustments, the third, fourth, and fifth, the ability for him to adjust and outstrike Max in those last 3 rounds and just start flowing was crazy, beautiful, a showcase of high IQ. Butchered and destroyed TKZ. That's not the best name at that point in his career, but at the end of the day, he shut him down and did exactly what you do to TKZ if you are truly the best striker on the planet. And of course, he TKO'd Chad Mendes way back in the day. This was before Volkanovski was anywhere near the level that he is today. This is the best striker in MMA, guys. Yes, he got tested hard by Islam Makhachev in that fight that he lost, but against anyone else on the feet, if you're just going to strike with this guy, it's going to be an issue for you. The only man, in my opinion, that can really challenge Volk on the feet alone is Yair Rodriguez, based on him being the best offensive striker. But at the end of the day, it's like we saw that fight, and Volkanovski ultimately got the better of the exchanges on the feet. And I believe that his ability to be defensively sound, his opponents just don't really know how to get the best of him. They can't hurt him. He's great at imposing his will and just dragging people into his fight style. And ultimately, the gap that he's been able to create between him and other fighters. Like, again, no stinkers on this list. This guy's on another level. He's the best striker in MMA. He's able to throw with high output, with power, with speed. He's able to switch stances. He doesn't really have like a similar pattern. And it's just a nightmare for people. He's got such good reaction time and instincts. So if you're not saying that this is the best striker in MMA, I don't really know if there's a good argument for anyone else, because anyone else that you're going to bring up, it's like, I can name a stinker here, I can name a loss here. It's like he's lost to Islam Makhachev, one of the most dangerous fighters on the fucking planet, one of the best grapplers to ever grace the sport, who's also on the list, who's also a weight class above him. But like, we don't really have any other moments in Volkanovski's career. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the best guy. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.
What's up, guys? It's Lucas Tracy MMA, and I'm wondering if you're trying to look like Yoel Romero. Well, if you don't have his genetics, that's impossible, but I could at least help you get halfway there with my ultimate lifting program, and if you're a beginner, my novice lifting program. These are programs that I've used my 9 years of experience in the gym to make so that you can put on as much muscle as possible in as little amount of time as possible. And it'll also give you a variety of workouts so that you never get tired of the gym. So if you're interested, click the link in my description. And for a discount, use code MMA for 30% off.